What's up, everybody? Welcome to Take No Offense. A couple of old friends who grew up together in central Pennsylvania. Now we live on opposite sides of the country. This is our chance to get together to share our thoughts on politics, sports, movies, and TV. I'm Eric Messersmith in the Los Angeles area, Brian Johnson in suburban Washington, D.C. We're recording this on Tuesday night, the 4th, at the end, near the end of President Trump's joint address to Congress. Brian, you're on the East Coast there. I know you go to bed early,
I
so
do.
you stayed up for most of the speech. What were your
I
thoughts?
did. Like many Democrats in the crowd, I snuck out early. I couldn't make it through the entire thing, as much as I wanted to hear. I do think the interesting part will be him addressing Ukraine. I don't think anything's going to change. I think he's just going to keep repeating the Putin talking points as he does. But I'm staying up as late as I can, man. I wanted to hear from our dear leader this evening, and I've heard enough.
Yeah, it was interesting. That's for sure. Overall, how did you? It was very. Look, these things are always partisan. That's the
Yeah.
first thing I noticed. Is this one though was much more partisan. First of all, a lot of Democrats skipped it. You had that outburst early, which I've never seen that before from
I
Al
haven't. I
Green.
Googled, has a member ever been removed from a joint session of Congress? And I didn't get any results. So
Yeah,
maybe Al Green is the first.
he was removed. He was yelling something inaudible at Trump. Trump right away he called out Democrats, at the very beginning, compared himself to George Washington. Lots of self-congratulation at the beginning. Like he wasn't looking for, bipartisanship. He wasn't going to get any, to begin with. But it kind of I don't know. These things, there's always more politeness, more formality. Everyone cheers usually at the beginning for the president, whether they're Republican or Democrat. That all, I guess, is out the window now. It does seem like this is yet another kind of norm breaking situation.
Yeah, it felt a little bit more like the House of Commons than a joint session of Congress.
Yeah, I thought the strength for Trump and where he started, where he came back to time and time again on the border, was the smart place for him to start. What did you make of kind of the highlights? What were the highlights for you from what he said?
I mean, the major highlights for me, I do to give him some credit. I think he did a really good job with the personal stories. Um, the young lady, oh man, her name escapes me. But the
Oh,
mother,
Lake and Riley.
yeah, that was good. And then my buddy DJ Daniel, that was a very sweet moment that
Yes.
occurred. I mean, and those happen all the time during these joint sessions, but everything else he says, and look, we know I'm not a fan of Trump. Okay, that's been well established, and that's okay. For me, it's really difficult to listen to someone who speaks as he does. I don't have to have, it's not about using large words or, talking fancy. That's not what I'm driving at. But he speaks so simply that it hurts my soul. And I don't know why that is. Actually, a friend of mine the other day said, I wonder how large his vocabulary is. Like his use of the word very. Like, count the varies. I bet he says very more than Biden. And that's the other thing that stood out, by the way, since you're asking me positive or negative, is I don't remember any of these. And look, I don't remember them all verbatim, but just how much it stands out, how much he just keeps beating up Biden. And
Oh yeah.
I turned to my wife and I said, Biden lost. He's, in a retirement home somewhere. Like, I felt like, leave Brittany alone. Like, God, you won, dude. We get it. And at some
Yeah.
point, it just stands out to me that he's going to have to move on,
Right.
because he says
Well,
things
but
like how amazing the economy is now. Well, the economy was great under Biden. What is he talking about?
well, except for the inflation, which is still high, which is why he still brings up Biden and blames it on Biden. He blamed the high egg prices on Biden. And look, the high price thing is going to work for a little
A
while
little
because we
while.
all understand he's been president for 6 weeks, right? Even though
Yeah.
he said he would bring down prices in day one, I don't think most people expected
Well,
that to
that's not
happen.
how economies work, but.
Right, but eventually you're going to own it. And so that I think he comes to this moment at kind of a precarious position. I saw today on the 538 average of polls. Today, for the first time, he has a net negative approval rating. First time in this term.
This
He's at
term.
he's at -1. That is the second worst net approval for a president at this point in their term, beating only Trump 1.0,
Right.
who actually, when he was less popular in 2017. So he starts as a very unpopular president, given where he is in his term, although more popular than he was last time. You saw the stock market over the last 2 days absolutely tank because of the
Oof.
tariffs that now have gone into effect against Mexico and Canada, with a threat of even more to come in April. We
Those
talked
may be
about that
rolled
today.
back, though. I suspect
Well,
there will be a conversation tomorrow. That's my understanding. And Canada, especially, is going to get rolled back.
they have said that. They have said that's possible. But again, it comes down to, this is the yo-yo of Trump: is does he really want these tariffs and all the benefits he says they provide? Or are they just kind of a threat he makes, but then he backs away when he gets some relatively small concession because he doesn't like the market
Right.
reaction? I don't think we really know the answer to that yet. I don't know if he really knows in his head the answer to that. But it's been a really rocky few days. There's indications that it's possible we could be heading toward recession. The Atlanta Fed is saying they're projecting negative GDP in the first quarter. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But you own the economy now, and it's going to be really hard to keep pinning it on Biden eventually. But I was struck by that. And look, presidents in the past at these kind of things have made references to
Sure.
previous presidents or their
But not as
administration, but
consistently.
not as directly and as
No.
consistently. And that's the point about Trump: is he because of just the nature of who he is and how he feels like he was persecuted after his first term, with
Well,
the
he was.
lawfare, as he calls it. He thinks, he sees this as a zero-sum game from the start.
Yeah.
Usually presidents come in and they at least wink and nod toward, hey, let's try to work together. They do things to try to reach out. And then if they're rebuffed or they see it can't work, then they try to pass things narrowly, right? Trump never even tried that. He skipped right over that. He went to pitched battle opposition right away with the Democrats. And look, the problem with that is you have such a narrow majority in the House. And that is why you saw the budget resolution they passed barely passed by one vote. And that's just the beginning of the process. One of the things I was struck by in this speech: normally when presidents do this, a big focus is, here is the legislation I want to pass,
Right. Yeah. Not a
or
lot
that
of
I
that.
have already passed. With Trump, the only thing that's passed so far, which he did point out, rightfully so, was the Lake and Riley Act, which I thought was a fine piece of legislation, basically saying that the people like Lake and Riley's murderer who were picked up on something like shoplifting, they would face deportation if they're charged with crimes like that, if they're in the country illegally. That's it. That is all. Now, it's only been 6 weeks. We'll see what happens. But the Republicans are really struggling with their big reconciliation bill. It looks like it's going to be months before they can get that across the finish line, if not longer. And what did he lay out tonight in terms of legislation? He talked about banning
Well, it's
some
not his
procedures
forte,
for,
man.
well, it's not banning some procedures for trans youth. He mentioned that, getting money for the border, for mass deportations, and some tax cuts, which of course is kind of the old Republican playbook. And that was it. The rest of it was basically, here's the executive actions that I've already done, and here's some more that I want to continue to do. And I don't know. That's just it's just, I just think it's worth noting how different that is from past presidents and what it means, because in the short term, the executive actions can be very effective, particularly like on areas like immigration and on trade with tariffs, where the president has in our system pretty vast leeway. But there's nothing lasting about that. That simply can be reversed by the stroke of the pen of the next president. To get it lasting, to get anything concrete that has a chance of some staying power and really can transform the country, you need to pass it through legislation. And I just think it's interesting that he's not even really, other than the one big beautiful bill, as he calls it, which again is months and months away and is going to be an incredibly heavy lift for the Republicans. Other than that, there really isn't much. And I don't know, if things start to turn south on the economy, there's not really much of a legislative agenda. I see flashing warning signs ahead for Trump after the last week or so. But if you watch him speak tonight and you watch the Republican reaction to him in that chamber and the things they say about him publicly, and you're on X at all, or you follow kind of conservative media, they make it sound like everything is fine.
Yeah, well, he did that with COVID.
The flashing warning signs aren't real,
Right.
and the polling and just kind of reality will tell you that it is there and it is real.
Well, as a judge told Alex Jones, it's not true just because you believe it. Like it's not a thing. Man, I'll tell you, I just based off of everything you just said, my challenges with Trump have not changed. You saw my note I sent you earlier about his statement on protests on college campuses. We don't have to get too far into that, but to your point about executive orders and what's going on, I posted or I saw that comment about the college campuses, and I told someone, who was the person holding a sign tonight that this is not normal? Did you see that?
I did not see it.
Yeah. Has that been a thing that's been around? Did that like somehow seep into my brain? Because I think that all the time when I see things now that happen, like this is not normal. Like this is unusual. And I don't know, dude. 4 years. We got 4 years. I feel like I'm serving a prison sentence.
Well,
I really do. I'm sorry, man.
Well, and the thing too is the fact checking. We didn't even talk about that.
Oh no, there's no need.
Repeating the Social Security thing, and he not only repeating it but going on and on about it. Which, if you watch the speech, he talked about how there are millions of Social Security numbers that are still active that do not have a death certificate for people who are well over 100 years old, in some cases over 200 years old. That simply means that in the system, they don't have a death certificate. He implied in this speech and otherwise that those those deceased people clearly are getting Social Security payments. There is no proof of that. In fact, if you look at the number of Americans over 100 based on census projections, I think it's around 100,000 Americans are over 100. There are tens of thousands of fewer checks going out to people over 100.
Of course.
What does that tell you? That tells you that, yes, is there a person here or there or who is committing Social Security fraud on behalf of somebody who's deceased? I'm sure there is. There are like 80 million people getting old age benefit Social Security checks. So I'm sure one or two of them are. But the idea that there's this mass fraud where people or checks are being sent to people that are 150 years old, there is no proof of that. And the numbers that he's talking about and that Musk talk about that they say shows that doesn't show that at all. It just shows they don't understand the data.
No, it's not that. See, to go back to the point that I didn't make very well earlier is that if there was a presidential speech during the joint session of Congress where that happened, where someone said something so obviously false and so easily disproven, that would be a major highlight from this speech. But to my point, we've just accepted that and we go, that's how he is. He just makes things up.
Right. It's true. Let me do some of the look. I think there's been a lot of bad or questionable about Trump over these first 6 weeks. Some of it was on display tonight. On the good side, the border numbers are incredible. 8,000 people were stopped at the southern border last month. 8,000. There were months
8,000
under
a day.
Biden where it was well over 8,000 a day. Yeah. There was several 100,000 in months under Biden. So
that's the line of the night, though. Just to interrupt you real quick, is what he said. You didn't need an executive order. You just needed a new president. That may be the line of the night for him.
Now, look, how he's doing it, shutting off basically all paths to asylum, all paths for humanitarian parole for people who are going through terrible situations in countries that are being devastated, like Haiti. I'm not saying I necessarily agree with that, but he has sent the message, and it has worked, There's no question about that. And then you and I started recording this before he finished, but I'm looking at the news
Oh,
now, and
he's
I
still
did
going,
see this.
buddy.
I did see that he is saying now, and I think this is great, that he is going to work tirelessly to end the Ukrainian war, that Zelensky sent him a letter. And it sounds like, based on the reports we saw earlier today, that they're going to conclude that mineral rights deal and maybe get the process back on track
Cooler
to
heads
at
have
least
prevailed.
hopefully, because that scene, we haven't had a chance to talk about it because we haven't done the show, but since last week before it happened. But that scene last Friday where you had Trump and Vance berating Zelensky in the Oval Office. I mean, I was sick to my stomach watching it. I almost couldn't finish it. I was embarrassed for my country. I really was. It's like we are siding with, I never thought I would see the day where
North
we
Korea.
are echoing Russian talking points
Yeah.
publicly and also in a meeting with a guy his country has been destroyed, thousands and thousands of his soldiers and his citizens killed, a democratic nation, an ally of ours from an authoritarian dictator, coming on the heels of voting for that voting against that UN
Yeah.
Security Council resolution condemning Putin's aggression, being one of only a few countries, along with Russia and North Korea, to vote against it. It was really disgraceful. As I've said before, though, as bad as I think Trump has been on this issue, as awful and as pandering as it's been to the Kremlin, if he somehow pulls the rabbit out of a hat and this, because I mean, look, everybody sees his strategy. It's not some 3D chess. He's being nice to Putin to get Putin to the table because they think that's the way to get a deal. I disagree. I don't think Putin cares about that, but that's clearly their strategy. If it works, I'll be the first to say, okay, fine. It was sad what you did. It took away some American credibility, but at least you got a good deal. But to throw Zelensky under the bus and not be unified going into those negotiations with Europe, with Ukraine, I think is a really, really big mistake. So hopefully what we're hearing today and the fact that it looks like things are getting back on track, hopefully that is the way that it stays.
I've had some time to marinate on this since this did happen a few days ago, and I had the same reaction you did, which I often do with President Trump, which is I'm just embarrassed for our country. So let's just put that to the side. I actually think Zelensky messed up a little bit, and what
I
I
was just
mean,
going to say that. I was
what
going
I
to say
mean
the
by
exact
that
same thing.
is I think I can. I don't, obviously I can't fully understand his position. I'm not a president at war, or, I haven't seen my fellow countrymen die repeatedly over the last 3 years. But what I would say is he could have learned something from the King of Jordan or even Justin Trudeau, which is I know it sucks to do this because some people have pride and some people have shame. But if you have shame, as we've discussed, politics may not be your game in the year 2025, year of our Lord. But why wouldn't just now? I'm just saying, why wouldn't Zelensky have gone in there and said, "Oh, wise Trump, you great and powerful man, thank you for leading us through this terrible time. I can't wait for your support, and we're going to build the biggest Trump Tower in the world in Kiev when it's not, like, why wouldn't he do that?"
I think so here's what I would say. I think the answer to your question is multifaceted. First of all,
Okay,
I think some of it is personal animus between the people. I think
sure.
particularly Vance. I actually think Zelensky hates Vance more than he dislikes Vance more than he dislikes Trump. But Trump and Vance don't like him. And I think he especially does not like Vance, in part because Vance has been so shameless in pushing the Russian narrative of
Yeah,
this war,
yeah.
even more than Trump. And Vance has been doing it for years. And if you noticed in that Oval Office visit, when it went downhill, it was after Vance
Vance,
spoke
yeah,
up
I
for the
noticed.
first time. That I think is something that cannot be overstated. I think Zelensky, see Macron, Keir Starmer, they came in and they disagreed with Trump in their Oval Office visits last week, but it was kind of subtle, and they were doing the praising and the kissing the ring.
Yep,
Here's
yeah.
my letters from King Charles. They're seasoned politicians in countries with a long democratic tradition in peacetime. Vladimir Zelensky is a president of a country that's a fledgling democracy and that has been at war for 3 years. And I just think he doesn't have a lot of fucks to give.
Well, no,
And
he didn't, because he said, we're not playing cards.
right.
He
but
said, Trump said, you're going to be cards. And he's like, I'm not playing fucking cards.
And if you watched if you read the transcript where they were going back and forth, if you just read it, what Zelensky was saying all was very calm, measured, and reasonable.
Yeah.
And what Trump and Vance were saying, some of it was hyperbolic and over the top. So if I were assigning blame, I would say 40% on Trump, 40% on Vance, 20% on Zelensky for not just kissing the ring and shutting up.
Well, I didn't say kiss the ring and shut up. Maybe it sounded like that, but I'm just saying.
I'm saying at that point he should have just shut up.
Yeah.
He should have. I'm not saying it was. He wasn't wrong, but his tactics, right?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Is tactics.
It was tactics. He was.
I'm talking about tactics, because my thing is, if I'm Zelensky, and this is a very tough position to be in, the truth is that they clearly need our help. They do. So, I mean, sometimes, like, I don't know, Coco Chanel and the Nazis, you got to do what you got to do, man. Just to survive. I mean, forgive my metaphor, but you know what I'm saying.
Right. He's got a country to save. Also, I think even though his main point, which he tried to make to Vance when it really went downhill, is you talk about basically, well, let's just do a ceasefire. Let's have some type of non-backstop security guarantee, right? Some loose, oh, well, we'll be okay. Let's sign a deal. Everything will be fine. And what his point is we've done this with Russia before, and every time they violate it, every time they break it, they don't care. The only thing they care about is there going to be a price to pay if we break something in the future militarily? And what they really care about is the United States going to make us pay that price? Europe alone probably isn't enough. And that's the point Zelensky's making. But at this, where we are now, we're past that idea of let's try to persuade Trump and Vance.
Yeah.
They are there. They have their point of view. So what Zelensky should do now is what he has done. Come out and say the other day it was regrettable how that happened. Say we're going to sign the minerals deal, which apparently is going to happen. Because here's the dirty little secret, I think, is that really the block to peace, it's not Ukraine, it's Putin.
No, of course.
Putin doesn't want peace because he's making incremental gains right now on the front line. Now it's at a huge cost. He's losing thousands of soldiers to gain a half a mile, but he doesn't care about his own people. So to him, that's worth it in the calculus, because if he keeps gaining land over months and months and months, then he'll be in a position to make an even better deal down the road. So if I'm Zelensky, I want to turn it on Putin right now and say, we want peace. Let's do it right now. Where and when? I'll show up. Force Putin to be the one who is standing in the way of peace, which I think is the ultimate truth. Yeah. I think the only deal Putin wants is the deal that is on his terms. My fear is, and I think the fear of a lot of people watching this is that Trump wants a deal so bad that he will be willing to give Putin a deal that is almost everything Putin wants. And based on what we've seen from Trump in his first term and especially here in the second term, I don't know how you really could bet on anything else. Yeah. He wants to be the peacemaker so bad, and he's so sympathetic to Russia's cause that I just don't trust him to not sell out Zelensky. And I think Zelensky doesn't trust him to not sell out Zelensky. So you asked, why did it go south? I think that's why it did. I think Zelensky sensed what they were saying is, well, no real security guarantee for you. And if you're Ukraine, why would you stop fighting if you didn't have it? Yes, this war's awful for Ukraine. And yes, it's terrible. And they're suffering massive losses. But if you don't have a firm security guarantee, why would you stop fighting? You might as well just keep going and just hope to wear Russia down and take your chances on the battlefield. Because if not, Putin's just going to do the same damn thing again. He'll wait 6 months, a year, 3 years, maybe till Trump leaves office. He'll rebuild his military and then he'll come
Yeah.
right back because that is what he does. It's
Yeah.
it's a track record here. All right, Brian, before we get out here, I wanted to a little bit of an abbreviated show tonight. I know it's late there on the East Coast. Do you have any reviews for us this week? Anything you've seen?
I just finished White Lotus season 2 very recently, so I can move on and watch White Lotus season 3 with you.
Okay, good. You'll be catching
Are
up.
you on it now?
Oh, I'm on it. I just watched episode 3 on Sunday night, so I'll wait until you catch up, so as not to have any spoilers for you, and then we can go through it from there. But I'm glad you saw the first 2 seasons since you hadn't seen them before, because as people know, have watched season 3. There are a lot of references.
There are references. I hope
There's a
so.
lot
Because
of
I have a
tie.
lot of unanswered questions, and I hope
There's a
some
lot
of the
of
loops are tied.
Yes.
Good, good.
Um,
The other one is I started watching Zero Day with Robert De Niro and Diane Lane and Angela Bassett and Jesse Plemons.
is that on? That's
It's
the
on Netflix.
Netflix, right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
Bobby D.
what is the concept of this show? I
Uh,
vaguely
it's a
seen it.
thriller, but I mean, the basic story is Robert De Niro is former president of the United States, and Zero Day is an internet attack that killed thousands of American people. And basically, it's a malware program that took over Androids and basically all electronic devices in the country. So, like, banks are failing. I got to say, it's pretty good, man. I mean, the actors in it are awesome. So, that really helps it out. I mean, the production value is extremely high. We've talked about this on the show before. Television it's basically a really long movie. That's the only way I could describe it. Is like when I'm watching this, it just feels like a really long movie, which I like because my challenge with films, given that there's so much good television, is you don't get a lot of character development. You don't feel like you really get to know the people or their situations. And when you can do it in, like, I guess this is a limited series, I feel like you do have the opportunity to really get to know the characters and everything, and you can tie everything up neatly. So I'm 4 episodes in. I'm not even sure how many episodes it is, but I suspect I'll finish that before we get together again.
Nice. I'm gonna check it out. The only thing I would say this week, I went to see Anora Saturday night. First time I'd been to the movies in like 2 years. And then of course Sunday it
The
won Best Picture,
Oscars.
Best Director, Best Actress at the Oscars. And so I'm glad I saw it.
Did
It
you
was
watch
good.
the Oscars?
I did. I watched it not live. So what I did is I fast forwarded through not just the commercials, but some of the more boring parts. Because God, it was like 4 hours long. It's just too much, man. We didn't need the 15-minute James Bond tribute that we could have done without that. Like it's always so long, and I hadn't seen hardly any of the movies this year, so I'm really glad I did see Anora. Anora was good. It was I did not expect it to be that funny. I didn't realize it was such a comedy. I thought it was more of a drama. It is hilarious. There's a ton of sex and a ton of swearing. So I
Hmm.
feel like you would love it, like right up your alley.
Hmm.
It's really actually very fun. I give it an 8 out of 10. It's not a great movie, but it's really good, really solid. The acting is outstanding. The writing is really sharp. They made the whole thing for $40 million in New York, which is nothing for a movie these days. Shot in New York City in a very short period of time, and it is actually very, very funny. So yeah, I give it an 8 out of 10. I would recommend it for sure, especially since it's just won Best Picture. Check
I
it
mean,
out.
8 out of 10 on your scale. That's a very solid rating.
Oh, it was good. Yeah.
But Best Picture, don't you feel like the Best Picture should be a 10 out of 10?
Well, I give Brian, as you know, I give very few 10. So I bet if you
You
went
do.
back and looked at my if
What
my
what did you
rating
think
for
of
the
Oppenheimer, last year's winner?
9 out of 10
It was
for Oppenheimer.
better than Honora.
Yeah, no, Oppenheimer, and it certainly was more of what you would think of as a Best Picture Oscar movie, kind of like an epic scale movie. Honora is nothing like that. Honora is more, like I said, low budget, but Very, but similar overall quality, in my opinion, in terms of being just a really, really good movie, and a movie that I would highly recommend. And as you know, the best movie of the year doesn't always win Best Picture. I can't
No.
tell you what the best movie of the year is because I had seen I only saw two of the 10 nominees for Best Picture, Anora and Dune Part Two. Those were the only two I saw. I'm just not,
Yeah.
as we talked about before, as you and I have talked about on the show over and over again. I now watch much more
Oh
television than
yeah.
I do movies, which and I used to see I most years I would see by the time we got to the Oscars, I would have seen six, seven of the Best Picture nominees. Now, like I said, one I had decided to go to the movies the night before to see a second one.
Look,
So
I'm
yeah, when
part of the problem for Hollywood because I only go to major event movies.
yeah.
I only go to see Marvel films, like the Mario Brothers stuff, things for my kids that I go to see because those are like the event movies that come out, the ones that are, making hundreds of $1 million, billions of dollars. I have no desire to take my wife to a rom-com. Like I just don't. Like if I'm gonna watch that, her and I are probably gonna watch it at home. Like that has really changed. So I think for the Oscars, you and I talked about this, not seeing any of the films. I don't have any desire to go see those films in a theater. Is Anora necessary to be seen on a big screen, or is that
No,
something I can enjoy in the comfort of my own
you
home?
definitely can enjoy it in your own home.
But that's what I'm saying. Like they really, when I say they, because I'm not in the film industry, but folks out there in LA, they're going to have to figure out how to deal with this, man, because
Yeah.
it's a real challenge. I don't have an answer for it, but like maybe I'll watch it, Nora. If it's on HBO Max one day a year from now, I might be like, oh, that one Best Picture. Let
Yeah.
me check it out. But to get me to leave my home and go to a movie theater to watch a movie like that, I mean, God, it's just not going to happen, man.
Yeah, that's what I thought kind of watching the Oscars this year is I thought, man, it just shows you how far the movie industry has fallen. And last year was a bit of a blip because you had Barbie and Oppenheimer both
Yeah,
nominated for Best Picture, both
Barbenheimer.
just right, both epic box office successes. You don't, but that's kind of an outlier in recent years. And it just is kind of in fact the I think it was the director of Honora in his acceptance speech when he won Best Director was talking about how we need to get back to the theater experience and filmmakers need to prioritize a theatrical experience and distributors need to focus on it and parents need to take their kids basically like, hey, don't lose the experience of the theater because that is part of what has happened is theater attendance has dropped and dropped and dropped, and a bunch of theaters closed during COVID. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
AMC meme stock thing that people started pouring money into that as kind of like a nostalgia play. But I felt that going in because I am part of the problem too, because I used to go to the movies all the time. And now, as I said, I don't even remember the last film we saw in the theater. It was probably 3 years ago. So going into a movie theater for the first time in 3 years, I was like, oh, I missed this. I definitely, it made me
Don't get me
think
wrong,
I
I
really
like
want to get back
going
in.
when I go.
Right.
I'm just saying the type of movie that I'm willing to go see
Right.
that necessitates. I mean, look, this
You're
is
not supporting the high quality art, is what you're saying. You are
no,
supporting the trashy stuff that maybe still could be an entertaining movie, but isn't the kind of stuff that, makes people necessarily fall in love with the movie.
no, look, dude. I actually don't laugh at this. I actually really like the Mario Brothers movie.
Oh, really?
I thought it was really well done with Charlie Day and the guy who plays Star Lord, Chris, whatever. You know who I'm talking about. Chris Pratt. He's in everything now.
Okay. Yeah.
But Jack Black was fantastic, and
Oh,
my
wow. That's
kids
that's
really
an
liked
all-star
it.
cast.
And like whatever. Is that going to win an Oscar? Absolutely not.
So did you
But
watch did you watch the Oscars at all?
I watched 0 minutes of the Oscars.
Wow. Not even Conan? Conan was
I like
hilarious.
Conan. He would have been the only reason to really go and watch it. I don't remember what I did instead, but I did not watch the Oscars.
See,
Actually, my
that is
son had a tennis tournament. That he was at a tennis tournament. I was with my little buddy. We were hanging out. I didn't watch the Oscars.
Yeah, see, that's part of the problem. Somebody like you, who's kind of who's a movie fan, who's
Oh
seen
yeah,
obviously most of the great movies of all time, and goes to the movie.
I think
The
almost all of them. If you look at the
you're
top 100, I bet I've seen almost all of them.
you're the kind of person they need to attract. But you're right. All right, well, I'll let you go. It's late there on the East Coast. We're recording this
Thank you
after the
for letting
Trump.
me go.
Yeah, absolutely. The Trump speech tonight. I know you beauty sleep, so I'm going to do you a favor, and
Yeah,
I'm going to
thank you.
let
I
you
appreciate
get
that.
some
God bless
sleep.
you, man.
But before you lay your head down on the pillow, do you have any parting thoughts, any words of wisdom that you would like to leave the audience with?
Um, I've been thinking about this all day, man, and it really happened with Trump's tweet about, or not tweet, because it's on True Social. Jesus Christ, about the college protests and stuff like that. Where initially I had just kind of accepted my fate for the next 4 years, but now 6 weeks in, I'm starting to get a little, dude. I might paint my face
You're
and
becoming part of the resistance.
make a sign and go somewhere. Or I may do hashtags. It's going to be one or the other. But I think when something as important as your First Amendment right to free speech is being infringed upon, I do think that is a fight worth having. Not getting mad because he's a simpleton, not getting upset because of how he deals with Zelensky or anything else, things that are way outside of our control. But those type of issues that are going to have a real impact on my life, on your life, on our kids' lives, like those are the things we should be standing up for. So that's my final
Yeah,
thought.
I agree, and I think the whirlwind of everything that has happened and some of the successes as I mentioned earlier that they have had, and particularly on immigration and the border, and the way that the media system, particularly on X, kind of amplifies
Yeah.
that worldview. I really feel like people who love Trump are kind of in this weird echo chamber that is really detrimental to seeing the larger picture. Because I think if you look at the numbers, if you look at the fact his approval rating has gone net negative, you look at some of the flashing economic indicators, there things are turning pretty quick,
Yeah.
much more quickly than they usually do in administration. And it's going to be a really bad time for Republicans in 2026 if this continues the way that it's going. It could be a wipeout. And the repercussions for that will be felt prior to 2026 because those members in the House, all of them, and a third in the Senate, they have to run for reelection. And if Trump's numbers start to get too low, they're going to pull away and they're
Yeah.
going to be a lot less likely to take those really tough votes or be supportive of him when he does crazy things like put 25% tariffs on our closest trading partners, increasing the prices of everything pretty substantially. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us. We hope you enjoyed the show. For Brian Johnson, I'm Eric Messersmith. We hope you had fun. You hope you agreed with us. But if not, please take no offense.